Hello everyone, welcome back to the 2023 European League of Football wide receiver tier list. This is tier 4. I had to re-record this intro because I had a face of thunder in the last one because I kept having software issues and I was furious. So this is a re-recording. If you don't know who I am, my name is Matt Bressington. I've been scouting American football since I was 18 years old, and I would like to get some of my content out there into the open world just to kind of prove my scout work. And hopefully try and land with a team in America or a team in Europe. That is the ultimate goal, and I feel like this could be a good catalogue in just expanding my repertoire, getting my name out there a little bit, and I appreciate all the continued support over the last few videos. Fantasy video, I have a few ideas coming up in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that one, and I apologise for the reusing of different clips. I appreciate it, and thank you very much. Just to clear everything up on the tiers, this is tier 4, so this is the players that are the first string to come in on the rotation. So guys that are going to give relief to starters, come in on certain packages and certain needs and schemes. You know, chunk yardage players, some like chunk yard specialist, or you may be bringing in a slot specialist to run 2 slots, or you know, that kind of player that's specifically needed in that certain role. Lastly, don't forget to like, subscribe. You know, you'll keep updated with all my stuff, notification bell, whatever you have to do to see my stuff regularly. And also, this is the kind of last tier where we're going to see consistent tape in the background because not all these guys have, you know, highlight reels I can use and spread their content around. So you'll be seeing a lot more of me in this video, and then a lot more of me in tier 6, and then even more of me on tier 7. So what? Tier 5 and 6. So you're definitely gonna have to get used to seeing me. So I apologize for that feature, but all the disclaimers out of the way. Let's just get straight into the video. Starting off strong, we got Luis Moreno from the Leipzig Kings. You know, he has excellent size, 6'1", 200 is like an outside and slot kind of combo. He's not really fast around the corners of his routes or his run after catches, so that's a little bit. I don't want to say lackluster. That sounds a bit harsh, but a little bit, you know, curved and inefficient. He is lengthy and pretty decent in contact. He kind of finds a way to make a play. He is a bit of a playmaker, but just kind of the lower end of the playmaker kind of spectrum. He finds a way to make the play on the run, and he will get through gaps, but he doesn't necessarily have that breakaway speed or that crisp route running. I do think he'll get around 200 to 400 yards. I think more close to the kind of 250. He's a Spanish-German, so I'm not sure how he kind of fits into the homegrown talent. If he's a homegrown or if he's a EU guy, I believe he's homegrown, but you know, he's a young guy as well, so I don't expect him to blow the roof off the place in this season, but he could be a very serviceable player to kind of bring in as relief, you know, because he does have pretty decent playmaking ability deep, and he does have pretty decent playmaking ability on the rack. So he could be a decent option for the Leipzig Kings, who are going to be struggling a little bit on the passing game. They are more of a run-based team, so we'll see how his role kind of means for that. He could be used more of as blocker receiver. We don't really see that level of his game so far in the tape, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see with Luis Moreno. Lawrence Regler is next. The Galaxy player is returning for his 3rd season. He's a former ELF champion with 852 yards in 21 games, 55.26% catch rate and 9 touchdowns. You know, that's not great for a catch rate as a deep option. It's not too awful. But, you know, 6'5", 190. He gets hit hard, but he does manage to keep the ball in his hands quite often on those kind of long contested balls in the sideline and in the end zone. I'm expecting him to go a little bit heavier this year, maybe around 200 pounds. I think would be best, just to add on a little bit more muscle so he can not get pushed off his route so easily. 852 yards over the last 2 years, you know, roughly 400 yards a year and 4 or 5 touchdowns. I expect to see that level of production continue. I don't see it going up. I don't see it particularly going down. So I think he'll kind of stay around there, which is very serviceable as a 4th option. So no problem there, I think, for him. And yeah, I think he's a very good example of it. You know, he's been there for so long. He's made a bit of a career coming in on the rotation of that team. So If it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Next up is our Polish wide receiver from the Wrocław Panthers. I apologize in advance for my Polish pronunciation. Bartosz Jijic, he's 73.17% catch rate, which is very good, especially with 22 games, 17 starting. To maintain over 70%, very reliable with his hands is excellent to see. He had 508 yards over the last 2 seasons, only 1 touchdown, so he isn't the kind of red zone threat or big play potential player that other people can be. But having an average of 8.47 yards per catch and just having such reliable hands, he's good short, he's good medium. He kind of just picks up the yards you need him to be. More size would be great, but I don't think he necessarily needs it if he's got such a decent catch rate and he's carved out the kind of making the first, second downs easier kind of role. It's a strange, very niche role, but he does it well, and with that good of a catch rate and for his average of 8 yards, first and 10 to get down to a 2nd and 2 is a lot easier than just throwing it up to a deep throw on the sideline. So I think that he's going to continue. Same thing, 250 yards. Maybe I would like to see him get more scores, ideally. With that catch rate, he could be very effective on the goal line potentially in terms of drags and slants. But I guess we'll see. The Panthers have had a bit of a turbulent offseason, so we'll kind of see how that affects their receiver core. Coming through next from the Munich Ravens, LUCA SALVO, the wide receiver with 18 catches, 333 yards and 6 touchdowns last season for the Munich Cowboys. Another player kind of transitioning from that team. He has some really nice route adjustments. He might get hit a little bit off his course, but he does maintain it well in terms of getting creative with the way that he gets around it. He has good balance. His release is a little bit subpar, but he's kind of sneaky fast. Inside the 5 when he gets the ball, he has that burst just to get through to the goal line and get the ball in the end zone, which is very good. Kind of pick plays would be very helpful there. He has good eyes to bring in the ball as well. He shows good concentration and good adjustment to the ball as well as the adjustment to the routes. So he's a bit of a. I've used playmaker a lot, but I think that he kind of is that as well. He makes something out of nothing. In terms of in scramble drill, he'd be excellent because he has such awareness of where to go, where to not go. So I think that he's a valuable piece that could be very helpful. 18 catches that season wasn't very much. He could definitely be targeted more. But that's the responsibility of the tier 4 receivers, just to get the ball and get the yards they need. And especially with that burst, if he gets that burst just on the first downs, he could be a very important first down player for the Munich Ravens this season. MADIN CEREZO is next up, returning to the Hamburg Sea Devils for another season. Last year he had an excellent year, and I think he's probably at the topper end of this tier. 64.86% catch rate on 48 passes for 544 yards and 6 touchdowns with 11.33 yards per catch. He's very agile. He's long. He's about 6'1", but he has very long limbs and really good catch radius. But his tracking's really solid as well. He's a little bit older, going into, I think he's 31, 32. I apologize, Jean. But he's got a long frame, really good speed, and I think that he is very balanced in his way that he can be that speedy, lengthy, or deep threat. But he can also use that speed and agility to really be effective in the slot and in the short and intermediate routes. So I'm expecting him to be another big part of that team. It really helps to have returning receivers. They know the culture, they know the playbook, they have the connection with the QB, they have the connection with the offensive coordinator, and with the other receivers on that team and the offensive line. It all kind of comes together, I think, when you have several returning players. And with Hamburg, they're really trying to push for that 3rd year in a row that they get to the finals. And having these kind of players that can come off the bench or kind of be on a rotation and get you nearly 550 yards is huge. And I think that he kind of hovers around 500, 450 again this year. And I expect him to be a big part of this team. Gregorio CALONEGO next up, Swiss Italian national player. He's young, he's 21, he's about 5'11", 6 foot, 190, so he has a good size. He has really good change of speed, somewhat one-dimensional route running. He's not particularly a route technician, his route tree is pretty limited, and he does tend to bring in the ball with his body, and he isn't a great additional blocker. But what he does have is good speed, a very high ceiling in terms of he is 21, 22 years old. He is a young guy, so he definitely has potential to kind of take off in more of a role as the season goes on. He does have very good change of speed as well. It translates well to his route running, but not as effectively as it could. And I think once he gets in a room with some really good, talented receiver coaches, I think that'll be a big thing that we see increase a lot in his game. And he is probably one of the players that could be looking for Rookie of the Year. He's got the amazing coaching staff in Heltavik. He has people around him that can teach him these things. He has a bit of not a void within the guards, but there isn't a crazy amount of talent that he could really put himself in to get 400, 500 yards. And he's got July in as well. So it's a good little young recruit within that team. And I think that will massively help him going forward into his playing career. NICO STRAHMANN, another returning player to the Galaxy. 22 ELF games, so he's been there for a long time. And a really good 79.49% catch rate on 62 balls for 824 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he is a great player for this kind of tier. Like, he's, again, another player in that kind of higher range of this one. There are some smaller size concerns, but he is a physical blocker. He's a very do-it-all player. Like, he can come out from the slot, he can come out outside, he can go deep, he can go short. I like him a lot. I think maybe he could be a little bit higher in this tier, and we'll see how he kind of develops throughout the year. But just with that catch rate, near 80% is just helpful everywhere. Like, wherever you are on the field, if you have a player that can get 80% on a catch, you're going to throw the ball to him. He's averaging around 30 passes a year that he receives, and I think that he should be more. We perhaps would see his catch rate go down, but I think he deserves more passes than that, in my opinion. But we'll see how he kind of comes out with this year, see if he's earned himself a bigger role, but I would say that he has, and I would like to see him get over maybe 50 passes this year, and see if he maintains the high catch rate, because if he does, then you've got like a possibly even a tier 2 receiver on your hands, and with playbook experience and with a connection with Sullivan, and blocking. So it's a kind of an all-round positive. I think they should feed him more, personally, and it would be a very good option to have for them. 6'10" Dragon from Munich Ravens, another Munich Ravens player on this tier list. He has rebursting, route running, really good cuts. His flexibility on the line of scrimmage is really good as well. Like, he can plan an X, Y, and a Z. His burst out the stops is fine. Like, he has really great start and stop speed, like on hitches and kind of when that first part of the out route, but then it's the burst into the out that I think it's odd. And I think it could use some work, but I guess we'll see how he kind of goes throughout the year. But the burst into the route and the release is great. His cuts on the start and stop, or the cuts into the next part of the release, are great, but then the burst into the next half of the release and the next part of the route is not great. So I think that he kind of maybe suffers from a bit of, maybe not fatigue, but like, okay, cool, I'm good now. I don't need to kind of carry on the route. But I don't know him personally, so I'm not sure if that's the case. But I would like to see him kind of continue that aggression and explosiveness all the way through the route, because he could be a serious player, and I expect him to be a big part. I mean, a Ravens offense, as I've said with all of them, there's kind of a lot of players that hover around this tier. And one of them is going to be able to propel themselves into the top echelon. Because Markel can't do it all. Like, he could, hypothetically. But I think he would prefer to have players help him. And I think that 16 Dragon is probably one of the better players that could. Just because of that burst and that explosiveness and the good cuts and the playing all over the line. But he absolutely needs to just kind of give everything to every route in order to succeed. Another Galaxy player, HENDRIK SCHWARZ, next up. We have 22 career games, 35 catches on a 60.34% catch rate, 454 yards and 5 touchdowns. Good balance, good hands in contests, Galaxy chemistry, Galaxy teamwork. There's nothing I haven't said for a lot of these guys before. He just kind of offers another balanced skill set, nothing too crazy. Kind of going for 250 yards, maybe the lower end of this spectrum, but I expect him to continue the same level of productivity. It's kind of hard to kind of get a gauge on him because he does everything fine. It sounds harsh and sounds very critical, but like, everything is to a decent standard. There's nothing that kind of stands out as a crazy factor. There's nothing that I think, oh, you know, he's doing that horribly. You know, there's nothing kind of like that. He's just kind of a decent all over. And I think that's why he's had a long career in the ELF and why he's always had consistent 200-yard production. Emil Raben from the Stuttgart Surge is actually a player I'm really, really excited to see. If you look at his tape from like 2020 in Boravia, he looks kind of slow, a bit sluggish, not great. And I definitely, I saw that footage first and I was like, okay, maybe like tier 6 kind of level. You know, I'm kind of surprised that he's being picked. And then that sounds horrible, and I apologize, Emil. But then I saw his 2022 tape from his Grayson University, and his improvement is wild. Like, I expect him to be another Rookie of the Year candidate. He has great vision on jets and extended sweep plays. That kind of extends from his 2020 play. He has much improved route running. Like, everything in his route running is better, from the release, the footwork, to cuts, to explosiveness. It still needs a little bit of work on his release. Like, it still takes a while for him to hit full gear. But everything is better. And I think that because he's so young, he has a lot of potential to improve. I can see him being the kind of relief option to kind of bring in a big play and kind of mix up the offense, keep the defense on their toes with his versatility in his scheme. Like, he can go on post routes that, you know, he couldn't do that 2 years ago, but now he can. The jet sweeps he's been able to do for a while. He has decent vision, good footwork with the ball in his hands, and you know, I was really, really impressed by the development he has shown in the last 2 years. And I think that if he continues that level up, he's just going to keep going and going and going. And he could, like other ones in this tier, shoot up. Like, this kind of tier is right on the edge of starter. That's the thing. So he is right on the edge of starter. And with the amount of weapons the Surge have, he's going to get a lot of time. And I think he gets a lot of balls. And I expect him to be maybe a 350 to 550 kind of receiver for the Surge. And I'm hoping I'm right, because I think he's a very good player. Melvin Palin is a Barcelona Dragons receiver that I think has gone under the radar, as quite a few of Barcelona Dragons fans keep telling me. 8 games to GFL with the Dusseldorf. He had 223 yards, 18.6 yards per catch. He's a Bishop's University alumni. He had 739 yards over 3 seasons in 50 games, only 2 touchdowns, which seems to be a recurring thing that he kind of struggles to get in the end zone. He has good size at 6'2", 190. He doesn't have breakaway speed. You know, he is a taller, rangier guy with good balance and good hands, but he isn't going to beat someone with their speed. Like, and I think that kind of might struggle with him getting deep ball opportunities. I guess we'll see how his catch in contest really is, because coming over the deep, which is where he is going to be getting most of his catches, if he doesn't have that kind of next gear to kick it in, he might struggle with production. And he is an E-import, so there is a certain level of productivity kind of expected from him. You know, 8 games in Dusseldorf for 223 yards isn't the best production. There might have been, you know, it's not the best of teams, so I guess maybe that could have been it. And maybe I think around 250 to 500 yards, I think, is the range I would put Melvin in for this season. But, you know, Sky's High is still young, just coming out of uni, like, recently. So, could come out and prove me completely wrong. Moritz Reidinger is the next player, another player of the Stuttgart Surge. He played 8 games for them last season and had 34 receptions on 408 yards. He's the deep threat for that team. I know I mentioned that Paul was a deep threat option, but this guy had everything down that sideline, and he is really, really good in contest situations. My concern is that he is only a fade specialist. Like, he has some inside route capabilities, and he showed some different dimensions to his route running, but mainly he's just the deep threat, and which is great. You know, it's fine. That's why he's in this tier. But I would like to see a bit more, you know, dexterity in terms of his hands as well. Like, they're fine, they're good, but they're not excellent, and a bit more variation with his routes. So if he can carve out his niche as the deep threat on that team, he could find a lot of success. Obviously, only 8 games with 408 yards, 34 receptions is really, really good, especially on a really, really bad team. So we might see him go even better than that this year, with a lot better of a supporting cast. You know, he could really flourish in that role. I'm expecting similar production just because of the amount of weapons they have. I'm expecting him to be around it, probably an increase, maybe 450. So you could make an argument that he would edge into the next tier, but it's just due to that lower games played and less route flexibility that I'm putting him in this tier. So Andre Serra is actually a player I'm very, very familiar with. As many of you know, I did a little bit of preseason work with Milan in terms of just getting, kind of work experience essentially. So Serra's a player I've written on before and know quite well. He is subpar with the ball in his hands in terms of he moves slower when the ball is in his hands. I'm not really sure why. I guess it's just concentrating on not fumbling. Decent hands overall though when hit, and good tracking of the ball over his shoulder, and kind of even if it's behind him a little bit. His release is not good. I don't like his release. He kind of runs it lazily. I feel like I don't want this to come across really malicious. It's just one of the players I've studied the most. But there's no pop on blocking. He in 2022 he played in the second tier of Italy, had 22 catches for 460 yards and 5 touchdowns, which is good. It's obviously a large amount of yards per catch, but it is in Division 2 of Italy. He played in the GFL as well during the first part of the year, but not really sure why he then moved back to Italy. But I'm not really too positive. But he is a good player, and he does have good hands, and I think he'll be a very young, successful player in the rotation for Milan. He's a little bit more of an outside guy that kind of gives him a bit more of a usage on offense, and I think that with him coming back into a system that isn't a Division 2, Luke's a very, very good QB, and he's better than the QB that he had in the second division of Italy. So more talent around him is always going to make him better, especially if he can learn from someone like Junge and Sincere and kind of to improve that release, because those two are particularly good players that have good releases. And I think that if he just soaks up all the information from them, he could be a seriously big problem for the league. So not a make or break for him. It's just I have high expectations for Serra, and I want to see him succeed, but he needs to kind of learn from these players that are around him. Marvin Rush, another Munich Raven, 73.21% catch rate, which is very good, and 775 yards in 21 games, 19 started and 7 touchdowns. 9.45 yards per catch. So, first down magnet, former GFL All-Star. He has positional versatility, playing all over the line. He's a smooth and solid route runner. His releases could improve, it's okay. He's nothing to write home about, but I think that where he kind of separates himself is the creativity in his route running. He just shifts it up. He throws feints. He's kind of biting on certain things and delaying and stemming. He's everywhere in his routes, and I think that that's a very developed part of his game, and you can really see the all-star level talent that he has. I think that he, again, another player that could be a tier higher, and it's just because lack of recent tape, honestly. And I think that with him coming in with those stats and with his pedigree, I have no problem kind of suggesting that he would be a tier 3 receiver following a good few weeks of production. And I've said before, in other Munich Raven players, they just need that one player. But if him and Dragan kind of link with Markel, they could have an excellent receiving core, and those two could just catapult to tier 3 or tier 2, and obviously Markel's already in tier 1, so they have potential to be a really underrated, talented receiver core. It's just seeing if it all clicks with the QB, with Chad, and with all these players with great catch rates and good production. Just seeing how they all mesh together, I think, is the biggest question mark around the Munich Ravens, being a new team. Cheku Sol coming through with the Paris Musketeers. Previously of the Galaxy, played 19 games in the year left his career. 472 yards from 45 catches with an excellent 80.36% catch rate and 6 touchdowns. He is smaller in build, but he has really, really good hands in spectacular catch situations. Really good balance. He's a creative route runner. The size does kind of play into his ability to get off physical coverage, and in terms of adjusting. You know, he's creative in his routes because he can get bullied off his routes, and you know that's kind of a double-edged sword in the terms of he knows how to throw feints and kind of be very shifty in his footwork and elusive in his route running. But that's because he's not very good at you know, putting his hands into players and swiping the hands off them when they try and get physical with him. But you know, he's coming back to Paris. He has the experience, obviously a really, really good catch rate, and he's a very nice change of pace. I think for Carl Sweet to have him kind of like possibly behind him in terms of that inside slot guy, I think that it really provides that speed to the finesse, and I think that'll be a very good combination of players. I'm excited to see how he does with Paris. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think that his tape is really, really, really thorough, and his movement is really fluid, and yeah, I can't really say enough nice things about him. I just really want him to succeed. Nearing the end of the video, but definitely not dipping in quality, Paul Lenhart from the Cologne Centurions, 13 games in his ELF career with 52 catches on 63.41% catch rate, 721 yards and 6 touchdowns. Another creative route runner, kind of seeing that as a reoccurring theme today. Kind of struggles on the bigger corners, kind of getting bullied off his routes. Another slot specialist, I feel, for him, kind of coming into that Cologne team. They do have a lot of taller receivers, one we'll get to in a second. So he kind of provides a bit more of an inside presence, as it were. So I think that with his experience and his speed and his quickness and his route running, I think that he will thrive in that slot role. Obviously, if you kind of account his 13 career games, you know, -1 with 700 yards, he could definitely edge into the above tiers. I just think that with his capability to only play the slot, he might be slightly limited in terms of players know what he's going to do. So we'll see how he kind of adjusts to that one during a year. But I'm expecting maybe 3 to 450, I think. 330 to 450. And if he can adjust to his, you know, hand placement and his ability to get off of these bigger guys, he could be even better in a slot, you know, because if he comes and gets like a nickel defense, he could get locked out of the game. But if he really figures that out, he could be a game breaker. So it's another big year for him. Like Sarah, kind of a player that I have high expectations for, and I'm hoping they can make the adjustments to the game to make them better. Lukas Kadlec, another player from the Prague Lions. I talked a lot about them in the last video and how much I think their receiver core is underrated. He had 466 yards, which led the team last year, 8 touchdowns, which also led the team last year, 25 catches overall in the season with an 18.6 yards per catch. Long arms, long frame, not the most natural mover of the position. You know, he has a bit of a poor release, but he does have offensive flexibility. He does have that deep threat option as well. So, you know, he's obviously one of Shaz's main targets in terms of, you know, the big play, the 18.6 yards per carry, and obviously he led the team in yards and he led the team in touchdowns. So for him to come in having a successful year is good for his confidence. I can easily see him coming into the next year as well, into that 500 range. But I'm also kind of expecting the younger guys to kind of come above him in terms of productivity now they've had more experience in the team. But I still feel like he is that, you know, he's a very important player. I think even still with the amount of depth they have on that team, I don't think that he's going to miss a step in terms of getting on the field and being able to contribute to the team. I know a lot of people think that they're going to be like one of the worst teams, but I honestly feel like the Lions are pretty underrated at this point. To conclude today's video, Chris Wedderburn from the Cologne Centurions, formerly of the Istanbul Rams. He played 2 games with them, got 35 yards and a touchdown. He did have drop issues with the Rams. He only caught 42.86% of his balls. He caught 3 out of 7. He's long and lengthy, and he does actually create separations. Like, he could have easily had triple those yards, maybe in the first game, but he dropped so many balls. You know, he has experience more now in Europe. He went, I believe, to Poland to get more experience and has speed when he gets moving. He is, you know, a big guy, and he is a former CFL Global Combine invitee, so he definitely has the experience. It's just the hands need to improve. And I'm hoping he comes in this season fresher, more confident. He's got a few more British guys around him, which sounds a bit silly, but I think that will help him get more comfortable. And in order for him to succeed, because he, like I said, he gets separation and he's long and he is fast. But as a wide receiver, none of that matters if you can't catch the ball. And I'm expecting him to be better than he was with the Rams. Maybe it was just more of like he understood the Rams weren't very good, and maybe that affected him on the field, because the balls were placed where he could get them, but he just dropped them. So it sounds like I'm being very, very critical of him. But another player I have high expectations for, and a player I think underperformed in his first stint in the ELF and will surpass his catches and yards and probably his touchdown. I think he'll surpass that in the first game or two. Probably in the first game, but that touchdown maybe he might wait another week. But absolutely expecting him to get more than 3 catches and 42% catch accuracy in his first it's like second stint in the league. And that is another tier completely polished off. 4 out of 6 now finished and done. We are well over the halfway mark, I think, now of players. Tier 5 and tier 6 are really, really big, so that'll take a little while. So I'm expecting to do a video tomorrow while I'm writing the notes, and then I'll probably do tier 5 over the next couple of days. So it'll take a while because it's a big league and people are still making signings. Like 10 days now, it's for like 9 or 8 days before the start of the year, and teams are still making signings. So I've been quite lucky in the fact that I don't think any receivers have been signed while I'm making this. But now that I've said that, it's definitely going to happen. But, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The support has been crazy on these ones in terms of people messaging me, reaching out and offering advice and support. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And also the Panini cards are sick. And I'm making a plea to the league. Can I please get a creator card? I really want that. I appreciate it. See you later. Goodbye.